Today's call will be presented by Eugene King, Senior GDSN Consultant at LANSA. Eugene has been with LANSA for over 18 years and has worked with LANSA customers across a wide range of industry verticals on supply chain, data quality, GS1 standards, GDSN, UDI and PIM projects. Before I turn the call over to Eugene, there are a couple of housekeeping items I would like to bring to your attention. The webcast technology that we are using today is called GoToWebinar. In the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you will find the attendee control panel, which gives you access to various webinar functions. For example, if you have a question or problem during the presentation, you can either raise your hand to get my attention, or you can type a question anytime during the presentation using the questions feature. All presentation-related questions will be answered at the end of the webinar by Eugene, and I will take care of everything else. Without further ado, I would like to turn the call over to Eugene.
Thank you, Ian. During this presentation, I will briefly cover the FDA's final ruling, the compliance timelines, and what you need to do to get started. I will also take a quick look at the problem of growing demands on your data and what you can do to meet those demands. The presentation will also include a demonstration of LANSA's latest offering, Sync Manager, which is a software-as-a-service solution that allows you to manage your data in one place. I will then move on to outline some of our key learnings from previous implementations, and finally conclude with a short question and answer session. The Food and Drug Administration released the final rule on 24th of September 2013. It requires most medical device distributed in the United States to carry a unique device identifier, or UDI. It also applies to certain combination products that contain devices and those licensed under the Public Health Act. A UDI system has the potential to improve the quality of information in medical device adverse event reports, which will help the FDA identify the product problems more quickly, better target device recalls, and improve safety. The system established by this rule requires the label and device package of each medical device to include a UDI, and requires that each UDI be provided in plain text and in a form that uses automatic identification and data capture, or AIDC technology. The UDI is required to be directly marked on the device itself if the device is intended to be used more than once and intended to be reprocessed before each use. Also, medical device records will have to include the UDI. The labeler must submit information concerning each device to the FDA's Global Unique Device Identification Database, or GUDID for short, unless subject to an exception or alternative. In addition, the final rule establishes accreditation for agencies that may operate a system for the issuance of device identifiers, for example, GS1. Failure to comply with this would equal no sales in the US. So let's take a quick look at the compliance timelines as they are now. The deadlines for Class 3 devices and devices that are implantable, life-supporting, and life-sustaining have already passed. And the deadline for Class 2 devices is rapidly approaching. In fact, if you are a Class 2 manufacturer and don't already have an account, you can now apply for a GUDID test account. At the moment, the turnaround for the creation of a new account is around 1 to 2 days, providing you supply all the data required. The FDA are advising that you apply for an account before the end of May, because after this time, they will be extremely busy and may not be able to process your request as quickly. So what's next? How do you get started? I put together a quick checklist based on the advice given by the FDA. First, review the guidance issued by the FDA. They have extensive documentation on their website which can help you to get started. If you have not done so already, then please take a look at this. You will also need to obtain or identify your DUNS numbers. If you don't have a DUNS number or numbers already, then you will need to request them as soon as possible, as it can take up to 30 days for these numbers to be registered with the FDA. This can delay the creation of your test account. At some point, you will also need to join an accredited agency to obtain your device identifiers. For example, I mentioned previously GS1. The earlier you do this, the better. Once you have your DUNS number and have joined an accredited agency, you can apply for a GUDID test account. The test account will be used by you until the testing has been completed successfully, after which you'll be moved on to a production account. You will also need to gather all the device data required for the GUDID submission. The question to ask yourself is, where is your data stored? Is it contained in spreadsheets or on technical drawings? Or is it in Bob's head from production? You will need to bring all this data together in a single location ready for submission. Compliance also requires you to put into place standard operating procedures for managing the data and assign key roles for entering and submission of that data to the GUDID. Assign these roles as quickly as possible and as early in the cycle as you can. And don't forget, if you are a labeler, you must be able to generate UDI compliant labels. And finally, you will need to select a publishing method. There are two methods of getting your device data into the GUDID: the web interface provided by the FDA and direct integration using XML messaging. You'll need to decide which would be best for your organization. Sync Manager, the product I'm going to demonstrate to you later, uses the direct integration method. Now, LANSA has extensive experience in guiding organizations through the process of submitting data to the GUDID. The demonstration will focus on two main areas. Firstly, how you can ensure that your organization meets the data requirements and have confidence that the device data submitted is accurate. And secondly, how the device data is sent to the GUDID. Before that, though, let's take a look at the growing demand for device data and how this can be addressed. The most immediate being UDI to be supplied to the FDA's GUDID. But it's not just the FDA requiring UDI data. You will, if not already done so, be required to supply other UDI systems across the world, Canada and Saudi Arabia, for example. And it's not just about UDI data. Now the demand for data is growing throughout the supply chain, and even for internal uses. And further complexity is added when you have to provide device data to different countries, as each may have their own data and language requirements. How can your organization keep track of all these different demands? Simply put, you'll need to implement a system for managing and publishing your device data. The term used in industry is Product Information Management, or PIM for short. A PIM will allow your organization to capture data. This can be done manually by uploading spreadsheets or even by direct integration to your existing systems. Organize data helps to improve efficiency and productivity of your users. It also helps managers in the decision-making process, creating a unified view of a device's product data. You can add additional data, which isn't currently stored in your existing systems, but may be required for both internal and external uses. One of the most important features of any PIM system is the ability to pre-validate the data before it is published externally. This will reduce the amount of rework required, and you can be confident that the data meets all the recipient's requirements before it is sent. Collaboration improves productivity, helps with efficiency, and eliminates rework by allowing users to work together and set tasks and to communicate directly with other users in real time. Once the device data has been captured, enriched, and validated, your organization can then share that data with other users, both internally and externally with confidence. Sync Manager from LANSA is a software-as-a-service solution designed specifically to address the needs of product information management. So before moving on to the demonstration, let me give you a quick overview of the processes of submitting device data to the FDA as pertaining to Sync Manager. So let's start with Helen, our responsible person. She's already created an account and is now using Sync Manager for managing her data. In the demonstration, I'll run through the sign-up process to show you how simple that is. She can enter the data manually, or if she already manages the device data in a spreadsheet, she can use the upload facility in Sync Manager and load the device data directly from that spreadsheet. And there is a third option available. We can directly integrate between your organization's existing systems and Sync Manager. This allows data to be synchronized with master data sources automatically. Once all the data has been entered, by whichever method you choose, additional information, including images, can be added. All the device data is validated against the GUDID requirements in this particular case. Now, LANSA has partnered with a third-party submitter which submits the publication of device data on your behalf. This simplifies the testing process and reduces the direct integration testing by up to 4 weeks with the FDA. Once the device data has been validated, Helen can now publish it to the FDA via the third-party submitter. Note that Sync Manager will not allow you to publish a record containing errors, and again I will demonstrate that when I get to the demonstration side. The FDA will process the request and send back a response. Helen will receive notification that the request has been processed and what action to take if there has been any problems with that submission. In this demonstration, I will run through the setup process, entering device data both manually and using spreadsheets, and look at how data is managed, and now finally we can publish that data. So now I'm just going to tab across to the demonstration. So as I mentioned, we'll start out on the website. So if you go to the website www.syncmanager.com, and don't worry, I'll put that on the final slide when we have our question and answer session. You can select the sign up option, and then that will automatically take you to the sign up screen. Okay, so then I can just enter my details. Enter an email address. Let's just use one of these down here, and then enter a password, agree to the terms and conditions, and then sign up. Now, I've already done that process, and what would happen is that when I sign up, an email will be sent to me. I can then verify my ID, and then once I'm done, I can then go in and sign up. This is a brand new account, so this is the profile I'm using. I press the login. So once I sign in, I'm instantly greeted with a tour of the product. So this is essentially a real-time tutorial that takes you through step-by-step entering your first item. So we've got a welcome to Sync Manager. I can then just press next. And it then indicates, well, this is where the products are. This is where my browse is. You know, if I need to go and look at my products, then I can do that there. If I then do next, it then says go to Data Model Exchange. Now, Sync Manager has been designed to be a very flexible application. And what we can do is we can load up what we call data models. Think of them as applications for specific market areas. Whether it's for UDI, whether it's for food and beverage, we can do any number of different things with that. But if I go next, you'll see the Data Model Exchange. And you can see what sort of applications we have here. Now, the one that we're particularly interested in here isn't this sandpit data model, is the healthcare and UDI. So I'm just going to select the healthcare and UDI, which will then load that up. So it now successfully activated the data model. I then can go next, and then it leads me on to create my first item. Yep, so it then said start the editor. I can go next to that, select that, and it then comes up with my first item entry screen. So the first thing I need to do is to select the category. So what am I going to be creating? So this particular data model, we have an item called a UDI item. And what this does, when I select this category, it determines what attributes what attributes I actually see for that particular item. So you saw there I selected the UDI item, and instantly now we can see a summary of all the different sections. So I've got my information organized by sections. So I've got UDI data, item measurements, item flags, item information, and which errors I currently have. So these errors indicate mandatory information. So this is information that is required by the UDI for me to be able to submit a device data to GUDID. I can then go through this and start entering the data. So for example, we need the DI. So we refer to that as a GTIN, but it's actually the device identifier. Now if I just quickly grab something I've got on my clipboard, stick that in there. So I enter my device identifier, and what we have here is an example of a checksum validation. So we make sure that this GTIN, the DI, is of the correct format. So it's now asking for a value. So actually it's asking for a 5. There we go. And again, it does the same again for the location number. So this is how you uniquely identify your device and how you identify yourself. So the GLN is used to identify yourself. Like that. Oh, that's expecting a 9. So let's put the 9 back in there, and so on and so forth. Target market is the US. And as you see, as I go through, each of the validations are then being reduced. Yeah, put in a brand name. So now I've got 9 validations. So I'm just going to save that. So that's the manual way of creating an item. But we have an easier way of doing that. If you already maintain your products in a spreadsheet, then what we can do is that we can take that spreadsheet and upload that data from there. So we go into this option here called Item Upload, and we go choose a file. Now I could just drag and drop my file onto this form here, but I've got one that I've got here, device data. I'm just going to select that and upload it. So now that's uploaded into Sync Manager, and that's waiting to be processed. So then I'm going to then select the mapping. Okay. So what we've got an option here is the ability to map from the column to the attribute. Yep, so in this case, my spreadsheet was actually a template that I'd created that matches identical to the actual system. But I can say, right, that GTIN, what does it want to map to? I can map it to one of these other systems here, which is fine. Okay, so that's happy. Everything is automatically mapped because I use one of our templates. I can then just run and start the import for that. It is now running. And what we do here is that we can see the percentage here. Yeah, so we've got 100, 100, 99 new, and 1 changed. Yeah, 1 changed is the one that I'd already created. So as we load that data up, it's validated. So if I go into my Browse option and select All, we now see a list of all the items that we have in that I've uploaded from that spreadsheet, yeah, with the appropriate names. And you can see that we now have validation errors on those as well. Now, what I can do, rather than view the list view, we have this option here called Dashboard and My Dashboard. And this gives me an overall view of the validation errors for my devices. So we see here that we've got 67 that aren't compliant and 33 that are compliant. And down at the screen here, what you see, what I've just dragged there, at the bottom of the screen, you can see the validation overview. Yep, so we'll see here, right, so we're missing all the depth, so we're missing all the measurements. Yep, that seems to be the major issue there, is that I'm missing all the measurements. So what I can do, I happen to be storing my device measurements on another spreadsheet. So I'm going to go choose a file again and go my kit and package measurements, upload that. I use the exact same template I did previously. Yep, so if I just open that up, you'll see that it's exactly the same again. Again, less information now because I'm actually loading just the height, widths, and the clinical measurement sizes. So I'm just going to start the import. And again, we'll see the counter there. So what's happening now is that as I'm importing the data, it's looking at the device identifiers, matching those device identifiers with what I've just loaded up, and then changing the record. If it didn't exist, it would actually create a brand new record for that. So again, if I go into all, you'll now see we have now reduced number of errors. Okay, so I can go into one of these. So what's this one? This one is attribute short description is too long. I can select that. And again, if I go in there, we'll then see, there it is. Where is it in error? There it is. So that's too long. So I can then reduce that one. Okay, validation has now been cleared. Or what I can do is choose an image. So in this case, I can add an image. So I can enrich the data and add one of my own images. I'm just going to select one of those, add that to there, and we can then save and close that. You'll notice now that the image has appeared in the list. Now I could have quite easily just gone on to the little cloud icon there, chose a thumbnail from here directly, yeah, and apply that change. Yeah, and then you'll see that that now appears there. So there's many different ways that we can do that. Another option, if I want to just compare devices, if I select two items and do a compare, it then allows me, so if I've got a standard item, so if I've got an item in a particular class of products and most of the data is the same, I can use this to check to make sure that I've specified everything correctly. So here you'll see the two devices side by side and where the differences are and where the similarities are. So I can just use that to do a quick selection. I also have an ability to copy. So if I've got, again, a device of the same class, I can just go in, copy that device, which then creates a new record, and I can then add the GTIN, the device identifier, my identifier, and where that item is actually going. So I'm just going to cancel out of that one and discard the changes. Now we've still got some errors here, so I'm just going to quickly go to my dashboard, and we'll notice, the short description value is not the correct length. So what I want to do, I want to actually download that, and I can work with them en masse from a spreadsheet. So I've selected the quarter of the pie chart of devices that were in error. I'm going to select all of those. I'm going to download to Excel. Now I can just decide which attributes I want to actually download to Excel. Yep, so I can select everything. I can just select what I need, or I can unselect all. I'm just going to start that export for those items. Okay, so it's now creating a list. Okay, now I've got one already prepared here, and I can then take that item and download it. So I can then work on those items. So you've seen it starting up there now, so that's come in. So you've seen how I can download all of those items there, and now I've got it in a spreadsheet, and now I can work with those items in that spreadsheet, and then I can upload those items again in bulk where required. Okay, so we've got our items published. So what I'm going to do is go into my dashboard and just go give me the correct items. In fact, before I do that, if I go into my dashboard, let's just go all. If I select an item which has got an error on there and try to publish, it won't allow me to do that. Yep, so if I've failed any validation errors, it will not allow me to send that information externally, in this case to the FDA. But before I do that, I need to set up a communication channel. I'm going to set up a communication channel. Now this communication channel, so I can set up multiple communication channels to different recipients using different systems. So I'm going to set up one using our test account, but let's pretend for now that this is the FDA GUDID, like that. Okay, we've got our GLN that's automatically filled in, our certificate. So if you were doing this with the FDA, you would have an AS2 certificate, and this is where you would actually put in your certificate itself. I can then put in a notification email. Let's have that one, and then save. So that's my communication channel now set up. Okay, so there we go. There's the communication channel. So if I go back to my items, and let's just select UDI items. So again, on the browse, I can just restrict the view to UDI items themselves by selecting it from the browse list. I select an item which has no errors. I go to publish, select the FDA, publish to the FDA, and that now has gone off to be processed. Now we don't have a test account here at LANSA, but we can just send it or emulate that sending out through the communication channel we've set up. So it's just a quick test. I can show the publications there. So if this was actually going to the FDA, it would go via the third-party submitter, and then a response would be sent back, and we could actually see what that response was. And we even get emailed with that response and the appropriate core ID and CIN information that we need to then feed back to the FDA. Okay, so that concludes the demonstration. So just to recap on the demonstration, I showed you two methods of data capture: entering the data manually, one device at a time, and then using the spreadsheet bulk upload functionality for a large number of devices. Now, in some cases, what I've seen happen is that the initial data is loaded via spreadsheets, but then the devices are maintained manually through the Sync Manager interface. I also illustrated how the data can be organized into sections, which can be further customized to make it easier for a user to work with. I enriched the data by adding images. You can further customize this interface and add your own custom attributes and sections as well. So I didn't show you as part of that demonstration, but if necessary, if you would request a demo or personal demo, I can actually demonstrate that functionality. You saw the validation in operation, and that I couldn't publish a record if it had errors. Now this reduces the amount of workflow when we start looking at reworking records. Yeah, we didn't look at the collaboration elements of Sync Manager in this demonstration, but suffice it to say that there is workflow built in, and you can set up tasks, and instant messaging is built into the platform. And finally, we saw the setup of the communication channel and how to publish that device data to the FDA. Yeah, so we emulated that part of it. Now, multiple communications channels can be set up to allow device data to be shared with multiple recipients. So it's not just about the FDA. So we're talking about having one set of master data and being able to publish it to a number of different recipients, but publish the information that's required for that recipient. Yeah, so we don't send them any extra information, we just send them that information that they need. So whether you're publishing your data to the regulatory or other standards body, or listing to e-marketplace sites like Amazon or eBay, Sync Manager can be set up to allow you to do that by creating a unified view of your data and validating it against the recipient requests. As mentioned, LANSA has worked with a number of device manufacturers to get the device data listed in the GUDID, and through our experience, I've come up with a number of key learnings which I would like to share with you. First of all, get started as early as possible. The earlier the better. If you are a Class 2 device manufacturer and you can apply for a test account, do it now. If you leave it until May, June, the FDA cannot guarantee the time that it will take to create an account. Today's turnaround is 1 or 2 days. Also, take into account the time taken to register your DUNS numbers with the FDA. Yeah, so once you have your DUNS numbers, register them with the FDA, This can take up to 30 days for this process to happen. Don't underestimate the time it takes to gather all your data together ready for submission. Yeah, gather it into one place. Yeah, it makes it easier for submitting your data. Yeah, once you've got it all in one place, and you can then validate it. Ensure that you assign roles and responsibilities for the process. Who will be responsible for entering which piece of data? Who will be the person responsible for submitting the data to the GUDID? Who is the main contact for the FDA if there are any issues, etc., etc. When you have a system in place, can you use that same system for internal data demands as well as external ones, yeah, other than just the FDA? And finally, you must allow plenty of time for testing. Using Sync Manager reduces the testing process by up to 4 weeks, but you will still need to work through the FDA's 6 test scenarios before being granted access to the production system. This itself can take up to 4 weeks to complete successfully. So that concludes the formal presentation. Further information, you can contact Ian Piddock using the details displayed on your screen, or you can go to the Sync Manager website, www.syncmanager.com, and from this website you can sign up for a free evaluation and start using Sync Manager today, or you can request a more in-depth demonstration. I will now pass back to Ian for the question and answer section of this webinar. Ian, over to you.
Thanks very much, Eugene. So during the presentation, we did receive a couple of questions. So just a reminder to the audience, if you wish to ask any questions, you can use the questions feature in the control panel, in the GoToWebinar control panel. If you get those questions in now, we should be able to get to them during this session. So as I said, a couple came in during the presentation. The first one is, do we have to pay to use the FDA database, or is it free?
No, that's free. Yeah, so using that database is free submission.
Okay, that was an easy one. Second question was, can I also publish my Class 1 devices data to the GUDID at the same time as my Class 2 devices?
Not at the moment, no. The FDA will let you know when you can submit that data. At the moment, they're only accepting account requests for Class 2 devices. If you already do Class 3 or life-supporting, life-sustaining devices, then you'll already have a production account and you can start submitting that data to the production account. You just have to put the publication date at September the 24th this year.
Okay, thanks. Someone's asked, what is a DUNS number, Eugene?
That's the number from the Bradley and Dunsbar that identifies your medical device. Yep, so it's used to identify the category of your medical device. Without it, you will not be able to submit that information to the FDA's GUDID.
So that's the Dun and Bradstreet number, correct?
Yeah, the Dun and Bradstreet. That's the
So I
one.
think that's the one that's required in order to actually sell anything in the US. You have to have the DUNS numbers issued, if I remember rightly. So, yep.
Yeah.
Another question: can I connect your product directly to my other applications?
Yes, Sync Manager has an interface which allows you, so it uses web services, so on danger of being technical here, it uses RESTful web services to allow you to push data to Sync Manager from your existing system. So it's something that your technical department would be very familiar with and will be able to use. It's just standard industry web services.
Okay, another question, does an importer have to submit data?
Oh, good question. We'd have to really discuss that offline. So if you leave your details with Ian or send your details to Ian, we can then have a chat about it. It's an interesting area, and we need to have more information regarding what you're trying to do and how you're and what you're doing.
Yeah, I could just add to that. I mean, there's some intricacies around that. If you're applying your own device identifiers, then yes. Sometimes, for an example, some items you may import might be unsterile, and then if you sterilize them, you're actually changing the products. Therefore, you would have to give it a UDI, and therefore you would have to submit. So I think that's one situation we've actually come across in the past with one of our clients. Couple more before we wrap up. Someone's asked, where is Sync Manager installed?
Sync Manager actually isn't installed. It's a software as a service, yeah, that sits on the Google App Engine, and it's a subscription service. Yeah, so you subscribe to it and you use it, but essentially it's just a web application that you can access on the Google App Engine.
Yeah, again, I can add to that, as you've all just been witness to a live demonstration from the web application, going all the way from signing up to using the application to loading data. It's a complete cloud-based software as a service solution, no software to install whatsoever. It runs entirely in your web browser. I think that's it actually. There's no more questions that have come in, so I think that brings this webinar to a close. So I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time out of the day to attend this session. Eugene, any final words?
No, not from me.
Okay, so thanks again once everybody, and that concludes the webinar for today. Thank you and goodbye.